You may have no reason to even care about color, you think, because, for example, you could be an inker or a letterer and you think, oh, I'm never even going to need to work with color. But you never know. There may be an instance, and don't define yourself by, a simple title. You could, at some point in your career, end up being, doing everything on your comic or a different role. So, be flexible and let's learn a little about color because you may also just be an independent comic illustrator or writer, creator, artist who doesn't want to work with color. You just want to do black and white, for example, or gray tone. But you still might benefit from learning about color and get excited enough about its possibilities to give it a try at some point. Because I think initially it seems like a whole nother thing to master and learn, but really starting with basic colors is really easy, and the program lets you put in colors really fast. It's one of the, if you do it, keep it simple, you can color a page in under 10 minutes if you do it simply. But obviously, if you want to do some really good coloring, like really detailed layering and stuff, then that's going to take a lot more. But just to get started, it's actually really, you can do basic stuff very fast. So let's start learning about color and how it's organized in the program. If you don't have a page, open one up. And actually, I'm going to close this and reopen a page so we can see again how when we set up a page, we get this option for basic expression color. In other words, like what is the, how are we going to be viewing this page? And you have three options: color, gray, and monochrome. So if we want to be working with color, we're going to click on here. If we want gray tones, which are, like partial tones between black and white, then we're going to use this. And this includes black and white as well. And then if we want just black and just white, we use monochrome. So I'm going to use color and create a new page. And if you're unsure if you are going to be working with color, just make it in color, and then you can still use only black and white. That's completely possible. And you can also, change how it's exported and so on. But in general, like we have our colors down here on the left in the initial configuration, and we have quite a few options of how we can look at our color, and I'll go over these in a minute. But in general, I just wanted to talk a little about what the two main types of color that we have, which are called RGB and CMYK. And when we export this file and we convert it from a Clip Studio Paint or a Manga Studio file into either a JPEG or some other image file that is common in that we use on the internet or elsewhere, then we're going to have the option of defining how the color is kind of going to be used. And if, in general, we say that if it's RGB, it's going to be for, digital media or some other device that will allow it to show a very wide range of colors. Whereas CMYK, which we use for print, is going to be a little more limited, and we just need to keep that in mind. So I'm just going to show you that right now, assuming I was exporting this page, and I'll explain exporting more later. We would just select what kind of file we want, and I'll just use a JPEG and save it where we want to save it. And here is where that option comes up, the expression of color, and here's where we choose if it's going to be RGB color, gray, duotone, or this one is just asking based on what we've already done on the canvas, but we're going to usually know if we want it for RGB or CMYK. So I generally use RGB because I have more of an interest in digital publishing than print, but sometimes you will be working with print, so that's when you're going to use CMYK. So just keep those in mind, and you'll figure it out, I think, as you go along, because you can also make further changes down here in your advanced settings of color. Okay, I'm going to cancel this for now, and let's start looking at our color wheel and other items. As you can see, we have like a rainbow circle around our color wheel, And basically anywhere we click on the edge of the color wheel, it's going to give us a change in our square that shows a range for that color. So in the bottom it's black, and on the top it's white, and then over here is basically how much left and right is basically how much saturation the color has. So over here it's black and white, and over here it's fully bright and colorful. If you go up to the upper right hand corner, those are the most like dynamic, bright, full form of that color that you can play around with. So that is your color wheel, and it also has a slightly different option if you click down here, and it becomes like a triangle. So I prefer the square, but they do pretty much the same thing. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. This is just a RGB, the three mixing ranges that we have in our color system here. And you also have on here two other ways that you can sort your colors and kind of make a color pick. I don't really use these tools that much. I just prefer the color wheel. It does the same job, but a little more quickly, I think. But if you do want to try these, check them out. This is a color set. So if you were limiting kind of your colors to a number of colors and not a complete full range, then you might use this and always rely on this, because when you go to this color, it's always going to look the same. And you have other sets in here, and you can download sets. For example, deep tone is a much more limited set of colors. And by limiting it, you're actually creating that as kind of a pattern or a general kind of trend for your picture. Let's take a look at a few others. Strong tone, very bright colors. Grayish, very dark colors. Yeah, so these are, I don't use these too often, but sometimes I will, because if you want a really pale tone, just limit yourself to these. And you'd think that actually by limiting you would lose the ability to create, but actually sometimes by limiting you kind of force yourself to work within a style, and it's actually sometimes a good exercise to do. I'm going to restore it to the default, and then let's look at the next one. We have this, which is essentially like our color square, but it's a little more, we can add actually other colors over here. For example, if I wanted to add this color right here, I could just put it in, and we get like this gradient of colors, and I can select anywhere in between. And I can do the same thing down here. I would just go back to my color wheel, and if I wanted a different color, and then I can go back here and put it wherever I want. If I want it right here, and then it just creates 4 different points that we kind of get gradients between, which is pretty nice. This is also a good way to create like a set of colors. Next one is something similar. It's just has like a range that we can adjust, and so on. Then last one is actually this is a history of the colors that you've used since you've opened and been working on your files. So if I add a new color, for example, if I go back to the color wheel and add say this really pale blue, and then if I use it for a while and then I go back to the history, now it's right there. It's the very first. So this is the oldest one, and this is the newest one. And there's more here because from the previous session that I did with these colors. So these are a ton of different ways for you to kind of play around with your colors, and you can hide or show them and kind of rearrange them based on how you use them. Like I said, I tend to mainly limit myself to my color wheel. And don't forget, we always have our foreground and our background colors right here, and our transparency at the bottom.